Alrighty, I think things from my side are going alright. So I will now just show off what we're going to be working on. I know, Mr. Landfill, you've been here long enough that you'll have seen this one in its previous state when I was last working on it. I meant to put a picture up to show where I got to. I have obviously failed in not having that ready to go. But last time we left it, this had a nice big lump of limestone on the top still, so I've took that off stream just to try and speed this along, because I know it sometimes takes a long time and you don't see a lot of advancement. So that's my goal for today, is to get this one. Sound is 5x5. Don't know what 5x5 means. I'm clearly not down with all the things. Sound is 5x5. Come on, I need someone to tell me what that means, because I feel like a square for not knowing what that means. Cool. I'm assuming you're checking this for me and saying all is good to go. Yeah. So my goal is to try and tidy this one up to completion. I've got another couple. There we go. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I've got a couple more things that I'd like to work on. So this is one of the ammonites I split in one of my last videos. Split pretty nicely, but there's just a few little bits of matrix here that I will try and tidy up as well if we got time. And then another one that I got 2 days ago that looks like it should tidy up pretty nicely. And then after that, what I'll talk about is a yeah, I mean, I am definitely a square, that I have no doubt. But what I'm going to hopefully do is, whilst prepping this, start talking about rocks and all the rest. But I'm also going to be doing a giveaway of some ammonites based on the performance of my next videos and all the rest. So my goal will be to get everyone enthused enough that they might actually want an ammonite, and then if we get, I think I decided it'd be like 1,000 views in 2 weeks on a video, or get another, I think, 40 subscribers, whatever it is they're required to get up to 250. People just need to put some comments in the videos that are coming up, and I will then pick a winner at random as long as you've commented, and yeah, I'll then get you some ammonites sent over. Busy trying to decide which ammonites would be the best. I've got a few of the ones that are in the prep case at the minute, and a few that are going to show up in the next video. So if you're interested in maybe owning an ammonite or getting one for free from me, just keep an eye out in the next couple of videos coming up, and I will definitely be sending some out free of charge for all of you, just as a thank you for enjoying watching and participating. Yeah, I'm going to get started. If you've got any questions or comments or topics you want me to talk about, as we have done before, start chucking them in chat. Otherwise you're going to hear the noise of the machine, and if you'd rather just some peace and quiet, then we can organize that as well. But it's nice to know that 5x5 is good. Where the hell does that term come from? Anyone know? Oh, and just to give people a change of pace, I'm trying out a different tip this time. So I was on the chisel tip last time I was prepping this ammonite, just as a bulk matrix removal. I've tried to see if I can do a better job with just the needle, well, I guess it's the short needle tip one, and to see if that will prep some of these bits a bit better, because with the fine tip it's a bit sharp, and sometimes I am not the most precise, and so it dings the matrix. So I'm going to try this one to just do some more of this broad scale prep. 5x5 military, I see, yeah. Well, that'd be why I do not know. Yeah, so just as a continuation of what I was talking about earlier, yeah, I was out foss hunting overnight on Tuesday, Port Mulgrave, where I got my ichthyosaur spine that I'm hoping will be coming back to me actually later this week, in a really nice ammonite. Last time I was out there, was hoping to find some more because we just had new moon, so the tides have been 5+ meters. So big tides, lots of erosion going on, some high winds, so I was hoping to find some more stuff. Nothing spectacular, although saying that, we've got a bit of a massive debate going on if the thing that I found, or one of the things I found, is a dinosaur footprint, which would be pretty unusual for the site. They are known from the Yorkshire coast, so it's not a complete rarity, but it's unusual for the location, but it looks an awful lot like one to me. But I am by no means an expert. So that's what I was up to the last couple of days, so it means there's a couple of videos coming. And I do appreciate everyone watching and all the rest, but trying to grow the channel, just trying to figure out some ways to get a few more people enthused, to try and start not necessarily making a lot of money, but maybe some money that would help just keep the channel ticking over, and not just off my own savings. And at the minute I need to get to 1,000 subscribers to even make any money off YouTube, so that's my goal, is just to see if I can get some of these ammonites from my collection that I picked up that people might want to own themselves, just as a way of saying thank you for everyone being involved and watching. Yeah, I've got a couple of really nice ones, and if you're interested I can show you this possible dinosaur foot a little bit later. I say dinosaur footprint, it's not a foot. Definitely not a foot. Okay, so I see. Well, thanks everyone for the update. I now feel like I could win my pub quiz with more useless information that always seems to pop up and no one ever seems to know. Like we had a hilariously dumb one in the last pub quiz. What's a small group of wildfowl or water birds called? And it turns out called a knob, which makes all Brits chuckle because if you know anything about that term, makes us all giggle because like we're little kids still. So more useless information, always good. But yeah, there you go. There's your ridiculous English term for the day. Small group of waterfowl is a knob. And that's compliments of my pub quiz. So what I'm hoping to do today is just see if I can get some of this matrix off. It looked like it was going to be okay, but it's just not moving very quickly off this at the minute. So I'm a little worried it might get tricky getting around some of these edges. And if it's going to be a pain in the butt to do with this tip, which might just be that I've lost my skills with it. It's been a while since I've used just this tip, but it doesn't seem to be wanting to go through this matrix very quickly. I will swap over to a different tip. It might also just be I need to just get a bit patient with it. It's been a while since I've used it, and it is going through the matrix just slowly. So yeah, the minute things are pretty chilled. Far too many rocks in my collection, and it's growing at a rate faster than I'm prepping them, which is part of the reason I'm trying to give myself some motivation to go get some more of these prepped and get some of them out to people who will enjoy them. I might start selling them one day. I got no plans to at the minute, but I know a few of the people I play some of my games with online said that they'd be interested in buying stuff, so we'll see. Again, it's just looking for ways that I can make my hobby pay for itself, which would be great. I would be very happy to get to that level. Just checking, I keep wandering off the top of the screen again. If I do start wandering off and you can't see stuff, do just ping me and I will try and be paying attention to it. No guarantees, but I will do my best, as always. So how's everyone doing today? It's been, what, a week since I last did a stream? Mr. Lanfield, do you want to take your new backpack out exploring, rock hending? So I know you were talking about that and your UV light for the UFO lights. Yeah, I'm alright, thank you, Mr. Lanfield. I'd say it's been a bit of a recovery after my overnight adventures. I ended up with a backpack that was a solid 60 pounds, so like 28 kilos, give or take, which isn't in itself heavy. It's when you have to carry it multiple miles up and down over rocks, but can't complain too much when that's your biggest problem, is you've got too many rocks in your bag. Seems alright to me. Although, I mean, it might be less enthused if I find out that this potential footprint is just some burrows. Because then it means it's like 20 pounds with a 60 pound block, so a third of my bag was just a rock that's got some burrows in it, which would be really sad. That would have made me a little less happy, because I could have put a lot more ammonites in it. But yeah, otherwise, cannot complain myself. Glad to hear you doing well as well, Pongo. Clearly working hard as always. Mostly because I'm just jealous that you can do this on your job. My girlfriend always told me off when I was watching YouTube at my job. Downside of home office. Yeah, this matrix is not behaving on this tip. I don't know what I'm doing wrong with it. It might be that it's just too pyrotic and it's just not enjoying it. Or maybe the tip's just a little too dull, but it's just not getting through that first layer to start being able to jackhammer away. It's just not making a dent. Oh dear. But yeah, it's been a good time of year for the UK fossil hunting. Lots and lots of big tides. Although that being said, one of the areas that I tend to go to at the minute is under flood warning, presumably because it's got 5 meter tide in at the minute, and also we've had a lot of rain and wind, so it's possible that it's too much too much of a good thing for the fossils is tends to be not ideal for the people. I'm just getting nowhere with this tip. I would have changed it out. I think it was a good idea. I don't know if the issue is this bit or the person behind the tool back behind me. So I don't know. We will just swap the tip and see if we can make the other one work a little bit tidier. But yeah, as I said, got quite a few nice new little ammonites. One absolute screamer of a beautiful ammonite actually as well. Which also just switch that up. If it fits in the box, it does fit in the box. There you go, just to make you all feel a little jealous. So that one managed to split pretty much perfectly. I cannot complain when you find is things like that. That was my best one from the trip otherwise, and it goes back together, he says, yeah, like that. So that's what the rock looked like when I found it. Just could see the edge of the ammonite. Put a chisel through that side, yeah, through that gap there, and beautiful. Love them when they come out like that. So really can't complain. Just wish this one that I'm working on at the minute would be more obliging in its willingness to get prepped and get open and get this rock off it. That being said, the the number I had to hit to find one that was going to behave like that was too many, far too many. If anyone's got any suggestions for other things that they think would be an interesting giveaway or ideas for things that would encourage people to engage with my videos, always open to them, because again it'd be nice to get a few more enthused people to ask questions and get involved in the chat, so I don't end up having to ask all of you the same handfuls of questions, or basically pick your brains for things that you guys enjoy. It'd be good to get a few more ideas as well, just to keep it fresh for everyone. Yeah, the coast was fun this week. I actually saw some people down there for the first time in a while. There was a lot of people trying to make the most of these high tides and the wind. So I'm sure there were some good finds. And I know there's a few big landslides that have happened. And so I'm told there's some really lovely fossils coming out of some of those. So I will be trying to get back out to the coast maybe later this week or early next week, depending on times and life activities. But I also need to head down that way again to go pick up my fossils whenever they're fully prepped by some of the experts. So I'm really, really excited to get my ichthyosaur back. I'm really excited to show you my hopefully very, very nice ammonite, which I'm told is very nice on one side and predated on the other side, which I think is going to make it really interesting, because then we can show you a bit more as well, which is one of the ideas for one of my upcoming videos, is to show why sometimes the less perfect fossils are actually sometimes scientifically the more interesting ones, because they give us more information. It's not just here's a beautiful fossil, but it can tell us more about the environment and ecosystems and things that are going on at the same time. Don't get me wrong, beautiful fossil is always cool, but if you can get beautiful fossil and cool other things associated with it, even better. Oh, cheers, Mr. Landfill. Yeah, I'd say the big thing is going to be when the next videos come out. It'll be based on those two, the number of ammonites I give away. I think my goal is to put, I think I said 1,000 views on each video. 1,000 views on one video or 1,500 across both videos, which is not out of the realms of norm for the channel, depending on how much I advertise it to. So I don't think it's an outrageous target. If I get both videos to hit 1,000, then I'll give out an extra ammonite. If I can pick up an extra 40 subs, then, or I say 40 subs, whatever it is required to get to 250, then get an extra ammonite out as well. So I think it'll be a few things just to potentially get people involved, and I'm hoping that the activity, which is, if you have a look at all my videos and all my fossil preps, like pick some of the things that you thought were the best, or pick the thing you thought was best find, best prep, give a link to it, or even just say which video it's from, because in that way hopefully it might get some new people who have not seen the channel or some of the fossils and finds to go have a look at those as well. I thought it was a nice idea. So something a bit different. But I do appreciate these streams tend to not be always the most thrilling. I quite like them because I got to prep fossils anyway, so it's nice to have people watching that I can chat to and kind of semi-distract myself. Don't get me wrong. I find fossil prep pretty cathartic at the best of times anyway, so it's not the end of the world if I have no one to chat to, but it's always nice to see people enthused about what I'm doing. Gives me a bit of extra motivation to try my damnedest, because people will see if I mess up. But one of the guys I ran into on the coast, actually, we had a lovely chat. He was visiting from Dorset, so one of my videos from quite a while ago talks about the fact that we have some rock layers in the UK, so-called strata, that travel from basically the southwest to the northeast. And so he's down from the southwest coast, where he does most of his fossil hunting, and he's up here for a week. 5 days, whatever it was, fossil hunting in the northeast, Jurassic material. So he's very familiar with one set of areas, but it's going to give him a chance to have a look at the other Yorkshire, or the other Jurassic material, just stuff from Yorkshire rather than the stuff from Devon and Dorset. But we were laughing because he spent about 10 minutes on the coast with me, and we'd already found, like, between the two of us, more ammonites than he would have found in an entire day in the space of about 30 minutes. So, just funny how different the locales are. You also get slightly different ammonites, different preservation, and different numbers of people. So Yorkshire is far less hunted than the south coast, probably because the south coast is a lot warmer, but it also attracts a lot of tourists because it's more famous for its fossils. So places like Charmouth and Lyme Regis have been famous for fossils since the 1800s. Mary Anning quite famously found a lot of marine reptiles, were the first marine reptiles down there. There's a movie made about her life not that long ago by Netflix, Amazon, called Ammonite. I want to say Kate Winslet was in it. Yeah, so the south coast is incredibly famous for its fossils. Yorkshire less so, although arguably as good fossils, just fewer people and I think a smaller section of coast, but it's still a large area and a lot of rocks to look at. I also will give everyone a heads up. I'm starting to put in my fossil lingo, for better or worse, into a lot of my videos. So you'll start learning the terms of pocket fossil, which is a little tiny rock that you pick up. You see a fossil in it, don't know what the hell you're going to do with it, so you just chuck it in your pocket, and you got pocket fossil. Kind of same thing as a pocket rock. A rock that you're not sure whether or not you want to keep it or split it, chuck it in your pocket rock. So that's going to start coming up a lot, just because I'm not going to be censoring myself from saying it, because I really like the term pocket fossil, because also it's where I tend to end up getting home, empty all my pockets or all of the things out, and every once in a while miss one, so you end up walking around and you go out shopping or seeing friends or whatever, and you just reach into your pocket and you go, oh, fossil, pocket fossil. So that brings me great joy. Those are also the ones that I tend to hand out to friends and everything, because they're the ones that I have to hand. The other term that you'll see far too much of is what's called, I call shamers, which are these ammonites that look beautiful, or fossils that look beautiful, but they're broken or destroyed or distorted. So you pick them up thinking you've got something really exciting, and you just go, oh, that's a shame. It's a shamer. There you go. I'm really advanced with my language terminology and usage here. I'm sure there'll be a lot of other terms that I will come up with other than the standard swear words when I smack myself with a chisel or with a hammer. But those are the ones I'm going to start introducing to all my chat, because, well, why not? Why not have a ridiculous term about fossils? Yeah, toolbox rock, kind of the same principle. You just pick up one, you just leave it there, so something you can enjoy wherever you happen to have it. I tend to collect with a waterproof jacket on. I say waterproof, rainproof, waterproof, the works jacket, and it's got really deep pockets, so it has a good natural ability to just hold my pocket fossils, and so I use it a lot more than I probably should, particularly when I'm just on an area, can't be bothered to put my bag down, just walking from place to place, just chucking in your pockets whilst you go, sort them into your bag later. But. Yeah, you said, Mr. Anvil, that was down to them using the rocks to hold was it rubber tarps down on the top of roofs as part of the waterproofing machine. Also, I know many people will judge me, but I approve of the use of decay with the cool. That's how the Fossil Channel's name or tag has came to be. When I was a young lad and MSN Messenger was a thing, I was looking for a tag to call myself, and so I thought, let's be cool and use dinosaurs are cool, make that into a somewhat cool looking tag rather than dinosaurs are cool. And so it's dinos, KOL to say that cool. The downside is people go, so dinosaurs school? Sadly not what it's about. Although increasingly as I talk to you, sorry, just made my camera blur. As I talk to everyone, it feels like it might be a bit like a dinosaur school. Excuse me. Oh, some of this matrix is hard as. And that'll be the thing that I kind of hope I can do with my channel as well as it grows, isn't just teach people about rocks. I mean, it's going to be great fun if I can, but also give out some of these fossils, get some into schools. But I do really enjoy chatting to kids about dinosaurs because, I mean, it's the easiest probably way to get kids into fossils or into science is you find the things that nearly all of them seem to enjoy, and for some reason dinosaurs is one of these things that when you're young pretty much all kids love, and so it's a really, really cool gateway to get kids into science as a whole, because you can get them to think about shapes, colors, what things are eating based on the appearance of things like their teeth and their claws, so they can start doing some relatively complex things and making some connections that help in general in the world, observation, logic, and sometimes you just get to show them really cool stuff. So that'd be great if I can do that with some of these fossils, but also if I can get the channel to a point that, as I said, it pays for itself, that I can get some slightly better tools, because if I had better tools this would be a damn sight quicker and I could do a lot more of them. But also do a better job, he says, hopefully, with the prep, because the better tools with the higher speeds and everything, yeah, they have a higher chance to ding a fossil if you're doing it badly, but at the same time the higher speeds mean that the fossils tend to pop nicer because the vibrations are just slightly higher, that the matrix comes away easier. So that'd be great. Oh yeah, the agates are incredibly popular things to collect. I find it incredible how many people collect them from, like, obviously the Great Lakes is a prime spot for them, but all around the country, and I say the country, I mean around the world. So I mean, I've got a handful of YouTube channels I watch, and there's some guys down in Florida who collect them. Lambo obviously enjoys collecting his agates in New Zealand. And there's plenty of people in Scotland, where I think most of the British agates seem to be, who collect them as well. It's amazing, those little banded calcite layers. I believe it's calcite. It's been a while since I did the geology on, but they look beautiful. And thanks, Mr. Lenfo, for dragging a few more people. Hopefully they don't get too bored watching a guy using effectively dental tools poking a rock. It takes a little bit of time before it starts to get to a level that's interesting. I appreciate for those who are not super into rocks. For those who are just joining, what I'm working on is an ammonite. So I'm just going to pause it. I'll give you a comparison. So the one I found 2 days ago, that's what they can look like. This one's never going to look quite as pretty as that, but it's pretty much the same size. So this one's split out of a nodule, right out of this nodule, perfectly. so I can't complain too much about it. The one that I'm prepping hasn't split or wasn't preserved with a big enough nodule that I could split it easily, so I've been prepping it off like that. So yeah, that's how I found this one in its nodule. These big limestone / iron rich nodules, which is why it's got this sort of rusted color on the outside. It's also why the fossils tend to look like fool's gold. It's because they're full of iron. Yeah, that's what working on is, just slow as a process because the rock is hard, and trying desperately hard not to hit the fossil where possible as you prep it and try and remove this rock. So we've got a little tiny tungsten carbide tip that's vibrating back and forth on this Dremmel engraver, the Dremmel 290. About 30 bucks if anyone's ever interested. 25 pounds give or take. It'll be a bit different in prices now. It's been a while since I looked, and with inflation doing its thing. But yeah, and then I've got these tips, these tungsten carbide tips. The ones I have come from a place called Zoic Paleo Tools, or Zoic Paleo Tech, and they've got a great website, loads and loads of things in there, which if you people are interested, would highly recommend checking them out. Obviously, they're a British-based company, that's why I know them so well. So there will probably be cheaper versions or cheaper sources if you live in any other country, which I suspect most of my viewers do. So just so everyone's aware. Yeah, I'd say the Petoskey stones are beautiful. Those corals are very cool. And for people who don't know, I'm trying to make sure I don't say the wrong thing about them, but for those that don't know, they're basically a bunch of corals that have been eroded out of the rocks by a combination of water plus ice age, glaciers, and rolled around until it basically gives them a polish. And what you then see is a bunch of sort of little hexagons in the rock where these coral polyps, each of the individual living animals, was once alive within the rock. And it looks absolutely stunning. They're really popular to be cut and polished. In some places there's loads and loads of it, but as it's become increasingly popular, I think COVID's probably responsible for a lot of the popularity of rock hounding and fossil hunting going up recently. What can we do outside? But yeah, in some places it's a lot harder to find them because they've got very rare. Although I do also like that in Michigan you've got a few different rocks that are sort of the man-made ones from the various car factories and things like that, where you get layers of either paint or paint plus resins, and you end up with this cool sort of layered rocks. I say rocks loosely here, but they appear like rocks and have hardened like rocks from the industrial processes. And for better or worse, it will be one of our geological landmarks that we as humans leave, or things like that. Yeah, I'd say, sure. I would suggest, I think it's on YouTube, a guy called Michigan Rocks. I might be wrong with it. But if you're in doubt, the one that I do know is a guy called Wild Kyle. He goes up to Michigan semi-regularly. His mum lives up there, and he goes fossil hunting for them. And when he goes up, he catches up with people who live there, and they collect them quite regularly and polish and cut them. And also they tend to find some of these other things that I know people quite enjoy, so things like trilobites. He had a really good find the last time we went up, Wild Kyle. This is. You might have to go back a few videos. He's also a bit shall we say, eccentric. Makes it really interesting, I find, because it's just someone expressing their personality and how much they love what they do, for whether it's old bottles or rocks or stones in general, or fossils. But yeah, he's quite a fun character to watch. But he goes out with, I think the guy's called Michigan Rocks, and yeah, they've got a really cool set of stuff that they show off. And I suspect that, again, if you're in the area, you probably could organise to catch up with them and go on tours and stuff if you need guides. I don't know for sure, but I would guess. I suspect most people that are doing the YouTube videos would be quite happy to do tours. And yeah, the Petoskey scones are really cool. The fact we get something similar here in Yorkshire, actually, for much younger rocks, I also find kind of fun. It's just the joys of corals, is they'll kind of have the same structure no matter how old they are. Not strictly true, but kind of. And so you get Carboniferous corals looking like Permian corals, look a bit like Triassic ones. And there's a few variants in it, and the reefs and the structures change, but in general they look fairly similar. Yeah, I was going to say, I really like the paint rocks. I think they're really, really cool to look at, and just show the industrial process in effect, where you just get layers and layers of paint. Oldest first, then the next one's on top, and then the next one's, depending on what colour you're spraying, either an individual car or run of cars. But actually a really cool way to demonstrate the geological process too. How you end up with oldest at the bottom, youngest at the top. It's exactly the same as rocks in the world. And then if you stop the process, you dig it out, you try and clean some of it off, and then start again, you end up with what we have an unconformity, where you end up with layers of rock that are not consecutive in terms of age, and you only have some erosional event in between. So yeah, you can really use all sorts of things to try and explain geology that people tend to then get a bit better. And it makes it, I would say in some ways, much easier for certain things, because for paleontology and geology there's always a challenge around the world, and this isn't aimed at the Americans here, but we have a major challenge with creationism, young Earth creationism, coming into schools, into the education sphere, and it's a fun one to try and challenge. And it's not that there's anything wrong with your religious beliefs. It's just you can't or shouldn't really mix them in schools, particularly when they don't work. Oh, really? I haven't even heard of surflight. That's cool. But yeah, so I was going to say, I quite like any modern equivalent way that can help explain how things work in the past is always useful. And it actually fits with one of the really important geology concepts of uniformitarianism, that things that happen today or how they work in the past or worked in the past. So you get your layers of rock forming your events that happen on the planet, volcanoes, whatever. Things that happen in the past are going to match those that happen currently. Although, funnily enough, that then got overridden by catastrophism, or a combination of catastrophism plus uniformitarianism, to get to where we are now. Is that we obviously don't see every single thing that the Earth undergoes presently if we did, we'd be getting bombarded by comets constantly, or massive volcanic eruptions and tsunamis all the time. And obviously we don't see all of those, we see a small subset of them. So yeah, there's a bit of both. Yeah, like Fortnite, because that's just something you can easily get your head around. Cooking also is a pretty good analogy for a lot of us. Like how do layers develop? What did you put first? How do you put the next one on? For like cakes, and then it starts making sense to people how layers of rock develop. And at that point, my chat has gone silent. Was it the creationism? When I'm not allowed to talk about creationism. No, it's no worries. It was just funny. It went quiet at the same time, right? So I was saying it. And yeah, Fortnite seems to have attracted a lot of attention as you Google the crazy man-made stones from our industrial processes. I have to say, one of the things that takes a bit of getting used to though with the fossil prep is just trusting that you're doing the right thing. And I say that hoping that I am. But there's times where it feels like you're just too close to the fossil, but you just got to kind of trust the tool to be doing the work that it's supposed to be doing. I just wish this one hadn't been as sticky. I thought it was going to be really nice based on the bits that exposed earlier. But unfortunately the rock is very stuck in some places to the shell. Sure. It's actually one of the first places I went fossil shark tooth hunting when I was younger. I spent a long time trying to figure out what we were looking for, and then got the eye in that we were just looking for these little black things on the beach, and the black things were all the heavily fossilized bits. So not always shark teeth, sometimes ray plates, sometimes little bits of bone, sometimes tiny chunks of teeth. But honestly, it's such a cool place. It's just the teeth are washing up on the beaches there. And I've seen some videos of people scuba diving off the coast of Florida actually, and again pulling some stupid size megalodon teeth out. And even the Ice Age stuff. So again, the joys of Florida and its rocks is that was underwater, then came back above. Lots of the Pleistocene mammals, so things like your mammoths and mastodons and saber-toothed cats and all those goodies. Then they start wandering over the top of these lands where these sharks once used to swim, and then they all get fossilized, obviously in their respective layers, and then erosion, digging, whatever it happens to be, pulls them all out, and you can end up with some fun combinations of things all in one spot, like the bottom of a river or under the water. But yeah, that was the first place I think I ever found fossil shark teeth, Venice Beach. Still, I grew up in the Caribbean. It's one of the easiest places to get to was Florida. So yeah, it was trying to find the easy spots. I suspect from my parents that they could keep me entertained with my rocks, and that was one of them. It was quite a few years later that I actually got to then go to the Carolinas, particularly South Carolina is where I went diving for shark teeth in the bottom of the Cooper River. So the Cooper River is quite a famous river in Charleston, effectively right through the capital of South Carolina, and it's going through these rock layers, same as down in Florida. And yeah, they got megalodon teeth in these rivers, and there's a certain couple of locations that are particularly good for finding them, where there's erosion or barges or something going on. That means all the teeth are washing into them. So the dive captain knew of some spots, and he just always would drop us in them and say good luck, and took a screwdriver and a giant torch. Screwdriver was not to dig out the fossils. The screwdriver was to hold you to the bottom of the river, because the currents would otherwise drag you away far too quickly to be able to see what you're trying to see. And you had a big torch in the other hand, and you then just held yourself in place with your screwdriver, use your torch or use flashlight if people prefer, back and forth, and just looking for those teeth sticking on the bottom. So it's a really funny little tool and a way of doing it. It takes some getting used to. Even if you've scuba dived a lot, going into some of these rivers takes some getting used to, because they're not very deep. You're only looking at maybe 20-30 feet, so 10 meters give or take, a bit less than 10 meters. So not very deep for scuba diving, but the water is filled with sediments, and if anyone knows anything about the physics, sediments tend to scatter light or absorb and scatter light, and as you go down, you actually lose most of your colors of light very quickly, and in fact in about the first 2 meters, 5-6 feet, nearly all of the light colors go other than red. And so the first, like 6 foot of water is like blood red, and it does get some getting used to when you're in the water looking around, and that's what you see is just blood red. Yeah, I'm aware, Mr. Landfill, that we all have slightly different terms for some of these things, which is why I try where possible to bounce back and forth. Same for the heights and weights and measurements and stuff. I try where possible, because I'm aware that I've got people from all sides and all measurement schools of thought here with us, so I try. And having grown up in the Caribbean, I for a long period of time would have called it only as a torch, only would have called a torch a flashlight, but it's having been in the UK long enough now that I have got most of the English vernacular. another oddball spot that's museum. Yeah, the La Brea tar pits is just a bonkers place. They've got that wall of dire wolf skulls, and it's just silly. So I've worked on one of the lions from the tar pits as part of my work, and so if you didn't know, America had lions until not that long ago, actually, till about 10,000 years ago. I know that probably sounds like an awful long time for some people, but geologically, not that long ago. Kind of the same sort of time that you had saber-toothed cats in North America as well. But a combination of climate change, taking out their big prey items, and humans showing up to always ruin the party. Yeah, they disappeared. But you've had lions in North America since like 200,000 years ago. Mostly up in Alaska to start with, and then they got down the ice sheets. I got asked about it. It was a cool study that was done a few years back. I actually got interviewed about it a few weeks back. And there's just some really cool stuff that we never really think of. Like horses and camels and things like that probably originated in North America, dispersed across to Asia, and then went extinct in North America. So the fact that you now have wild horses is not because they evolved there specifically, it's because the habitats were really good for them, because I mean they did evolve there in the first place, but then people brought them back when the first settlers started returning, and that's why the environment was so good for them, is because it was their ancestral homeland. Yeah, they evolved there, went extinct, then got brought back. There's also a bit of debate still is about cheetahs, and cheetahs themselves might have also evolved in North America. Still a bit of debate on that. Sorry, just give this a bit of a clean and see where we're at. Because the middle is starting to get to that point that it's either there or not, and I fear the not is more likely than the there at the minute. But also with regard to the tar pits, sorry, I'm just going to keep wandering around on my random thoughts that I normally do. There's a few other big tar pit sites. I think there's one in, I want to say Venezuela, that's producing some incredible stuff. It's less well studied and much more recently discovered. There's also another big tar pit site in Trinidad, I think it is, in the Caribbean, where they've also got these incredible fossils preserved from things that have fallen in or died and fallen into these asphalt pits, which has then preserved them. But it's just funny, that's how they preserved. But yeah, effectively all of the places in Central and South America that have got lots of oil, or at least oil close to the surface, seem to have got tar pits. And the South American ones in, I want to say Venezuela, have some really cool cats in them. Different Smilodon species, so saber-tooth. I'm going to loosely call them tigers here for, again, the common usage. Not anything to do with tigers, but we all know them as the big cats, the saber-tooth tigers, in English at least. But yeah, I was going to say, sorry, I got myself distracted trying to look at the details on this. So yeah, the South American ones are really important as well because of their position at basically the end of Central America. And so there's a fairly important period of time where South America and North America are two separate continents. And as they sort of bump into each other, or Central America volcanoes erupt and join the two continents, species start traveling between the two continents. For the most part, species coming from North America going south, like humans. But we get a lot of other ones coming from South America going north. So we've got giant ground sloths, for example, come north. We've got these weird, like giant armadillo-like things called glyptodons. They come north, and a lot of the big cats go south. And so Smilodon from North America heads south, and they get species then appearing in South America. Welcome back, Mr. Landfill. My apologies as I get a little distracted from chat presently. So just try and see if the middle of this thing is here. Looking increasingly like not. Because as I go down, there isn't any signs of more appearing. So I think the middle of this one's gone. It's a shame, because I thought it was going to be a really nice ammonite. Still not bad. I'll give it a bit of a wash and clean later, but we'll put that one to a side. Again, I'm just going to grab another one just to show. If the middle's there, that's what it would have looked like. Nice tidier center where it did get into a really small coils, but the small coils are not preserved in the bigger one, sadly. So what I'm going to do now is just see if I can quickly, infamous last words, quickly just tidy this one up to then have it done. This one, I'm hoping, shouldn't take very long. All that's got to be done is just remove a little bit of matrix from here. There we go, in the middle of the shot. So there's a little bit of matrix when I hit this with a hammer that didn't come away with the, or didn't separate onto the other side of the block. So we've still got a little bit here, and if we can remove this and quickly done. And then I can get one more off my list, which is always good. And this matrix also a lot softer than the last one, so it's going nice and smooth. And for those who aren't used to geology terms, matrix is the rock in which things are held. It's the ground material. So in this case, the ammonite is found in a matrix of other rocks, or a certain type of rock. In Yorkshire, the rocks tend to be limestone or shale, mudstones, depending on what the preservation is. The best ammonite's preserved in 3D and with limestone nodules, and we get a lot of preservation of most of them is in the shale, or the mudstones, which tends to leave them very flattened and not collectible, or not easily collectible. Yeah, sure. There's also, is it the Smithsonian, have a regular crew that go out to Panama, particularly being involved with the expansion of the Panama Canal, and so I imagine they've got a lot of stuff in their collections as well. And again, it's one of those fun things in paleo world of when's the best time or where's the best place to go fossil hunting. It's anytime there's a chance for rocks to be exposed, whether they be eroded or someone's quarrying them, or in the case of the Panama Canal, digging a massive canal or expanding a massive canal, because then there's a lot of rocks being dug up. And so I had a friend who was doing some work there, and they basically were just walking the edges of the canal and where the canal was being expanded and just picking up fossils or preserving the ones that they could. It's kind of the same as in a lot of places. In California, for example, there's a few companies that hire site paleontologists, and they basically just sit and keep an eye on building sites or roadworks or whatever it happens to be. just to help keep an eye that nothing's getting dug through that they could rescue or save whilst it's going on. Also tends to be a similar case for archaeologists. And I see why this bit didn't come off. There's a big nasty lump of pyrite on it. Yeah, almost certainly. But I mean, it depends on what mitigations are put in, but it effectively has cut off the two sides. That being said, there's still plenty of places that animals can get across. The biggest challenge with a lot of it is it's not just the canal, but it's the canal plus the building up around it as well, and so they tend to remove forests at the same time, and so you end up increasingly wide barriers for animals getting from say North America to South America, or even just one side of the canal to the other. Similar concerns have been raised about the wall in America, between America and Mexico, and the effects it might have. I'm not getting into the whole thing about migrants and all the rest, cannot say a word being English at the minute, but by putting up a wall to stop people, you're also stopping the animals getting through, and so there's concern about them basically isolating populations, particularly of certain rare species of things like, again, the cats can't get through and they need massive amounts of land, so once you can stop them being able to access land on one side or the other, particularly through some of the big parks that are in the area, you might willingly or not deliberately end up effectively killing off the population just because they can't breed, they can't get enough land, they become isolated, and so it's always a challenge, and unfortunately the environment tends to be the lowest of the priorities for a lot of governments, and so it tends to be the bottom of what people care about. It's changing, but I think it might be a little too late for, unfortunately, a lot of things that already happened to be undone. But we'll see. I'm hopeful that the current and upcoming generations are going to be able to do a lot more than we have done so far. Yeah, I was going to say the whole thing with conservation is just, it's a challenge. You're always balancing priorities. Like, what do you save? If you can save a species or several species, is it better to save the ecosystem? Is it better to save that individual species because it's cute and fluffy and it tends to attract more money? Giant pandas, for example. Or would you be better off trying to save something else? The one thing I think most conservationists are in agreement with, though, is it's better to not spend the money trying to clone the things. It's better to not lose them in the first place. So we've got plenty of scientists, I say plenty, there's a fair few that disagree with that sentiment, mostly because it gets some more news, who will be then trying to clone mammoths or extinct, I don't know, lions, tigers, whatever it happens to be. But the biggest problem is, for a lot of that, is unless you happen to have brought back the ecosystem that they all went extinct out of, you're wasting your time. You're basically just developing a species to then stick it in a zoo, rather than actually conserving the species. which makes it an interesting conundrum. And so there's a few wild parks that have been trying. There's one in the Netherlands that got pretty famous. They were trying to do, I think it was something like Pleistocene Park, but that's not the correct term. I think that's the term for the one that's trying to clone mammoths in Siberia. Or eventually. But effectively they were trying to bring back some of these Pleistocene ecosystems that we used to have in Europe. And did so fairly successfully from what I gather. They brought in bison and deer and all sorts. Didn't have a massive population of predators, which is also a very common thing in Europe. And so what happens is you end up with boom-bust cycles. So if you're herbivores, so you end up having your camels, your bison, your species that you don't normally think of in Europe, getting to fairly large numbers because they're in a safe, protected environment, no predators. They then strip the environment of all the food. They then all start starving. Makes bad press, but in fact it's a very normal cycle. You see it all the time. There's some really well documented boom-bust cycles of all sorts, from mice to lemmings in the Arctic, but it's bad publicity, and when your money for your conservation is about appearances, you tend to choose the thing that looks the best, which is why things like giant pandas got a lot of conservation money. They're cute, fuzzy bears, whereas if I was to say, do you want to conserve a beetle, most people will say no, or I'd rather give my money to white rhinos or whatever. But yeah, so as soon as you start having mass die-offs of all your big herbivores, you end up in a lot of trouble. People don't tend to like having big predators around. Again, there's the fear of what they'll do if they ever get out. And cattle and sheep farmers tend to hate them. So then instantly you can't get your environments that you're trying to set up to even try and bring back anything. So again, should be focusing on what we currently have rather than trying to set up new and different things. Or if we're able to rewild certain areas, I'm totally down for that. Yeah, I'd be totally down for bringing back the ammonites if we could. I'd actually much rather we actually preserve the nautiloids, the nautiluses. I don't know what the correct plural is of nautilus. I'm going to go for nautilus. So yeah, in the Pacific Ocean we still have living relatives of the ammonites called nautilus. They're the beautiful shells that have, I want to say it's the magic number or the Fibonacci sequence in their shells. That's sort of like, double check the maths thing. It's one of the maths things that's why they're so special, is they basically follow a perfect rule of how they get bigger in the chambers. But they are also just beautiful shells, and so they are under a lot of pressure because people want the shells for their desks or their houses or whatever. And so those species that did survive the mass extinction, survived the time of the dinosaurs, are under a lot of pressure because people want the shells for the desks. So I'd be totally down for just, let's keep the nautiloids alive, because they are the closest thing we'll ever have to an ammonite again. And they are really cool. I've seen some living ones when I was in Australia, and they're bonkers looking, but it's such a cool feeling like you're looking at this weird species that there once upon a time would have been an ocean of basically those things. So you would have had schools and schools of them just swimming around, and I just love that idea. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting conservation movement required for that, because how do you convince people that nautiluses are pretty? Because they aren't. As an animal, they are not a pretty looking animal. As a shell, they are a gorgeous shell. But I really love them because they're so weird. So what I can say is, if you ever get offered a nautilus shell, go buy it, or try not to buy it unless it's really, really old. Because the more people who buy them, the more pressure we put them under. And that would be a really sad state of affairs to wipe out. But I guess that's the case for a lot of animals. We tend to find them more useful as things to show off on walls, like tigers being hunted to pretty much extinction across their range. Like, it's crazy to think that, like, not that long ago, like within human civilization times, we would have had tigers stretching all the way across Turkey, cheetahs stretching from Africa through India, lions similarly from Africa all the way to India, in the space of what, 8 to 10,000 years, probably even less, all gone, which is sad. And certain species like the Balinese, or I say species, but possibly subspecies, like the Balinese tiger, gone for good. Even though people keep suggesting that it's still out there, I have my doubts, because it's a big bloody cat for a fairly small island. But every once in a while you hear success stories or miracle stories of cats being rediscovered. I want to say there was one in Taiwan recently with the clouded leopards. Might even be in Hong Kong, but that they found some alive that they didn't expect in a little park. But it does also that fun game with conservation of how do we conserve and what is worth conserving, right? Where do we put all the money? Is it worth wiping out a shit ton of rats on an island so we save the seabirds? Is that more important than something else? I don't know. I don't have an opinion. I know plenty of animal people who really strongly disagree with the fact that it's basically killing a bunch of animals to save a bunch of animals. I kind of have the opinion, save the things that should be there and solve the wild species. Well, I say the invasive species. That does tend to cause problems, so when your invasive species are things like cats, and that tends to make people less happy about doing what needs to be done to protect the other animals. But I am not here to tell people what to do. I have not spent enough time on all of the nuances to tell you the best thing, but I know it is one of the many, many things that is a challenge to get right. And there's plenty of places like New Zealand who are fighting, and Australia I guess equally, who are fighting the fight to go what's the priority, and rats and mice are on the receiving end of a lot of poison. To try and save some of the native bird species, and cats are on the receiving end in Australia because they're eating all of the little wallaby things. Yep, I think that's generally a fair assessment of it, unfortunately, Escher. You remove the people and things tend to revert. The problem is it's just a question of how much damage was done, how easy that reverting is for nature. I guess the prime example was always the Pripyat marshes near Chernobyl, so I have no doubt everyone here knows about Chernobyl. But yeah, obviously with the fallout, a large quantity of that area became uninhabitable. And when the people disappeared, we ended up with one of the best wildlife sanctuaries in Europe. Plenty of concerns about the health of the animals within it for radiation reasons. But there seem to be fairly healthy populations of all sorts of things like wolves and deer and things that are rare outside of that area are doing all right within it. Kind of similarly with the DMZ in Korea. So between the two Koreas, who are still technically at war, there's the no man's land. No one goes, at the risk of getting shot or walking on a mine or whatever it happens to be. But it's a massive area, and because there's no one there, there's populations of all sorts of animals in there, including, again, rare tigers and wolves and things that aren't that common outside of it, just because, again, there's a lot of pressure. And even if we're not actively trying to kill them, you every once in a while just get an animal that accidentally strays into a car, or in the case of a tiger might eat a cow or something and the shepherd doesn't, or cow shepherd, that doesn't work, or the farmer doesn't like it, or a sheep and the shepherd doesn't like it, and you end up with them getting killed. So yeah, as soon as you can give animals space, they will be fine, but the problem is there's increasingly less space on this planet. So it will be very, I want to say, interesting in sort of the morbid curiosity way, to see what happens in this planet over the next even 10 to 20 years. I think will be a very interesting time. Oh yeah, I mean the archaeological sites across Central and South America that they've started finding, also with like satellite imaging, LiDAR and things that just go through foliage. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of undiscovered things, I'm sure, out there, and the planet does have mechanisms to fix itself. It's recovered from far worse, but it's not something we should be testing it to see how well it does, because chances are we will be one of the losing species. So we can go back in time. Actually, it's one of the fun things is have a look at how bad things have been before. The mass extinction that takes out the dinosaurs, the meteor that hits the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, takes out the dinosaurs, takes out ammonites, takes out the marine reptiles, things like ichthyosaurs and pliosaurs and mosasaurs that are all there, and some of them were already very in trouble. Takes them all out. That we think of as a massive extinction event, and it was, not arguing it, it was a massive event. Something like 70% of all animals on the planet, all species on the planet, die. So an enormous casualties. Stuff gets through. We get enough time. It only takes something like 10-15 million years, and most of the ecosystems are back to, I would say, the normal setup with big predators, big herbivores, small herbivores, plants of all different shapes and sizes, animals of all different shapes and sizes. It doesn't take long for the Earth to do it after something like a 75% wipeout, but what comes back is very much not what was there before, as we know by the fact there's no dinosaurs. But that wasn't the biggest extinction event we know of in the records. The biggest one is the Permian-Triassic mass extinction, and is probably a series of events. There is uncontrolled global warming, probably triggered by a massive, what's called a TRAPS eruption. So instead of having like a volcano that goes off, what happens is rifts open up and you basically spew many millions of volcanoes worth of lava out across an area. If you look them up, the TRAPS system basically it's enormous. It's across a huge chunk of Siberia. So they start going off or start erupting. The volcanoes trigger warming and cooling events of their own with the gases that are escaping. But then they go through probably an area that had what we think to be a lot of coal or something similar deposits, and so sets off a bucket load of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. the carbon dioxide does somewhat similar things to what we're seeing now, just on a much bigger scale. It gets sufficiently warm that that extinction event starts killing off animals, like the volcanoes plus the first bit start doing the damage, and then it hits a catastrophic level of warming that the methane clathrates, so basically mineralized methane that exists in pressure in seawater, starts to bubble and come out of its sort of solid form, and then you release a new wave of warming with the methane, which then means that the animals that were already in shit, for lack of a better term, sorry for the swearing, but the animals that were in trouble from the first things, the eruptions, then get walloped again, and then you end up removing 90% of life on Earth. And so a huge change of the ecosystem then. So that extinction event is when we lose the trilobites. That's when we actually end up with bivalves. So if you were to go to the shops and get shellfish, nearly all of them today are bivalves. But before the Permian extinction, nearly all of the shellfish would have been brachiopods, so a different group of shellfish. So we have a huge turnover, a huge change in the ecosystems because of it. And I mean, everything changes. The corals, the reef systems are completely different afterwards. Life on land is hilariously stupid as like a handful of things get through. And so all of the land ecosystems afterwards basically turn into the same thing of like a handful of survival taxa that for some reason are adapted to this weird apocalyptic world. If anyone wants to read a book, my old undergrad supervisor, a guy called Mike Benton, wrote a book on it. It's been his research area for a long time. It's called When Life Nearly Died. Good read. Talks a lot about Listersaurus and some of these mammal-like reptiles that are some of these survival species. But yeah, if you think like wiping out 10, 20, 30% of species, I mean, we're kind of already at that level with our current events, with humans knocking out all the megafauna across the world, not just Americas, not just Asia and Europe, but also the Australian ones. We're already at that level, so we don't really think much about it. Then wipe out 70%, 80% starts getting pretty serious, and then wipe out another 10% with what's left. Yeah, it's a thing. So really kind of terrifying. I'm not saying that's what the planet's headed for now. I am saying it's an insight into what can happen, and also one of those things that we might be brilliant as a species. We definitely do plenty of cool stuff, but if we set that off again, this Earth is not going to look like it does now, and that will be scary. And I will put good money I will not be here to see it, so it'll be the kids in the next generation. Yeah, Bang, I would love to publish a book too. I spent a long time trying to think what I would write about. I've got one of my good friends, a guy called Thomas Halliday, who's just published his book called Otherlands, which has been a roaring success. It's such a cool thing to see. I'd love to just have an idea that I think enough people would read to make it worthwhile. But yeah, Otherland's well worth a read as well. A really cool book. It kind of flashes you through different ecosystems than you perhaps may know of. Some of them you might know of, but it flashes through like a series of time periods, looking at Lagerstätten in particular, where we understand a lot of the life in them, and he talks about what's going on. Also, highly recommended read. Also an audiobook, if I remember correctly, and in multiple languages. So not being paid to advertise his book, I promise, but worth it because good friend runs a hell of a fantasy rugby league that I play in. Yeah, it's just what we consider today normal. I don't think we're an awful long way away from it not being normal anymore, and that's scary. But I live in the hope that a combination of politicians and our businesses plus some new tech might do it. I fear that is not going to be the reality, but I hope. So otherwise it's too depressing to think about. But it is one of the many issues with politics at the minute, and don't get me wrong, plenty of issues with it, but with a lot of the countries that have 4-year windows, you can't really get a lot done because you're then worried about if you're going to get into your next one, your next time to get back into power. So you don't really worry about the stuff that's 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, like climate change, like global warming. You worry about what's going to buy me the most votes, what's going to get me the most money, and so we're setting ourselves up for trouble. But we will see. We will see. And Bang's wanting to use ChatGPT or Chat5 or whatever the most recent one is. Now that you've also, we know that you can't trademark or copyright AI work based on, I don't remember which Supreme Court it was, might have been the US one. Yeah, go nuts. The problem is someone will just copy it because you can't copyright it. Good. This is the level, this is the stage. Let's see if we can get it up to a level that you can see it fairly clearly. So it looks pretty good, and I'm not upset with it. But this is the area where I'd love to just have an air blaster, because there's all of these little nooks and crannies in here that I can try and do with the tool, and I'll probably give this section a go, and some of this section here a go. But right in the middle is going to be such a pain in the butt with this tool that I might just have to leave it. So that's where we're at with this little one. It's going pretty well, I can't complain. Fossils have been pretty good so far today. I've got a bunch of other ones taped in my box plate. So if you ever see me collecting, I get electrical tape to close. I've just got a bunch of them in the box here that I don't remember what's in them. So that's always going to be fun to explore. But also, I just realised I didn't say it. Welcome back, both Asher and Bang. Good to see you both back here. Hope you're both doing well. And I meant to ask, Bang, what's your background? Because, I mean, you're obviously getting involved in a lot of paleo stuff and finding some cool bits and pieces. Are you still a student? Are you working for a degree? Have you got a degree? Just always curious what sort of people I've got watching, where everyone's backgrounds are. I just love the shell on some of these ones. It's just stunning when it's all polished up and the calcite on the shell. Oh, it's just beautiful. I really love it. So yeah, it's prepping okay. Yeah, that middle's going to be a bit of a problem. So I might hold that one there and give it a good wash, and then we'll just have a look at it afterwards. So where are we at with time? We've been streaming an hour and a half. Yeah, we've got some time to do some more. So I'm going to have a look at some of the other ones that I pulled off the beach in the last couple of days. Bear with me as I go quiet and not quiet as I go and grab some. So I like this one. Little tiny beach worn ammonite. It was nothing special on the beach. This was what it looked like. Put a chisel through the side of it again just to open it up. And a beautiful pyrite preservation, like really golden. But again, you can just see where it's opened up. This left being a little bits of rock, so the bit here matches up with that bit there. The bit in the middle matches up there. So just going to tidy these bits off, and then that should be fully prepped. This I think might be one of the prizes for, again, people who watch, because I quite like it. I think it's a really beautiful little ammonite, and the gold color is beautiful. So this might be one of the ones that people could win. So that's what might be on the block if people are interested. As I said before, if people weren't around. Channel is, I mean, still growing fairly well. I can't complain. We're still gaining 3 to 5 subs a day, every day. So it's going pretty well. But the viewer count is not consistent, and so it'd be cool if I can get some more viewers to stay here. And part of what I'm planning to do then is do some giveaways of some ammonites, and trying to find a selection of ammonites that I think people would enjoy having themselves. I think this would be a cool one if I can prep it well. No pressure. But I can see why it didn't pop this section. Ooh-wee. A lot of pyrite in it. Oh, it's graphic art department. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a skill to be able to produce art that clearly explains things to people, and it is such a skill, and it's one of those things that is very underrated. So really interesting to hear that's what you used to do. I've got a few friends who do some graphical artwork, and they've increasingly started to try and market out to publication, or people for publications, because increasingly large numbers of publications, scientific publications, require a graphical abstract, like an image that talks about what your paper is on. I don't know why it's relevant to the paper, but it becomes something that is required, and it's driving a market for good graphics, good graphical artists. But again, if you get good, clear imagery, it's just so important to helping get people to understand and appreciate the messages. So yeah, it's cool. This is so damn hard. Oh yeah. I just can't get over how hard this is. This is a solid lump of pyrite on it. It's one of those things, if we can get a little bit of it to start coming off, it will probably go reasonably well. Also, if you're wondering why every once in a while you hear this sort of noise, it's just where the tool hits the glass box. It's just me not holding it very well. So please don't stress, don't worry, not the tool breaking, it's just me not holding it well. Yeah, I'd say, Asher, it's again the luxury that I did a bit of prep work on the big one beforehand, because it was actually one I'd been prepping last live stream, and it wasn't going very fast because it had a giant lump of limestone on the top, so I thought I'd do a bit of that off screen. And then these I thought would be a good chance just to show off some of the finds, just to get you all a little excited about the next videos that are coming out, which have me finding this one. The previous one that I prepped was in the previous video from Raven's car. Yeah, I think it was a Raven's car find. In that case it didn't come from the last one, that was Brunswick Bay. But it's one of the most recent finds, so... Oh, jeez. sure this one's going to get much better, and that's sad. I was hoping this one's going to be a really good looking one, but it's just solid. Maybe it'll get better. So maybe. Cool. Sorry, so yeah, just to show you what I was looking at, I got most of this lump off. There's still a bit more to go here. I was just trying to track this around, so I can see whorls there, the outer edge of whorls all the way around. But there's a gap here that worries me. And this is just really hard, so I'm not sure how well it's going to prep. So that's what I'm just looking at. But also, whilst I say that, I managed to get very warm. So I'm just going to quickly check on the Be Right Back thing and take off my jumper, grab a quick drink, and I will be right back and I'll give you the music. Right, yeah, I'm back, so I'll give this a little bit more of a go. I'll see if I can tidy this corner up, and then I'll see, having just got that wet, if that will go any better. But I have concerns that the middle's not there on this one. Actually, no, I'm going to pause that one. That one's going to be fiddly work. I don't want fiddly work right now if I can help it. He says as he grabs another ammonite. On Dremmel rock hands. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's just incredible how much there is around, and just finding the people who know what to look for. So another ammonite from the coast from the other day. It's pretty good split, not perfect, but not bad. So we'll just aim to just tidy up the little bits of rock around there if possible, and see if we can do anything with the middle, and then this will be done too. I do quite like these. It's much easier and quicker than trying to do the whole bloody thing. But the problem is, in return, that you feel like you have to do as much as possible to these ones because you haven't spent very long on them. So it's finding the right balance of what's good versus good enough versus risk of doing more damage to it. And if you're looking for, I mean, I dropped a few pot-sized books. If you want another one that's pretty decent actually, about geology, I can highly recommend, I think it's called The Dating Game, and it's about the quest to figure out how old the Earth is. So it's talks about all the different methods that were used and how the opinions have changed from 4004 BC based on a literal count of everyone in the Bible back to the, where are we at now, 4.6 billion years old, give or take. And that's quite a cool story because it changes so much depending on what we first know of the planet and the processes on it. So for example, you assume that the planet's a giant molten ball. How long does it take to cool down? You can get a number of that's how old the Earth must be from molten ball to cool down. But that then runs into the issue that if you don't know about radiation, which then keeps the middle warm, well I say warm, obviously molten, it comes up with a very different age. So a cool book and fun just to sort of as an intro geo and history geo book. Sorry, Mr. Landfill, I hope you have some success with your hunts when you're out there. It'll be interesting to see what you find. I hope you'll be able to share some of your finds with us. Always really fun seeing what everyone's picking up, and as I said, the video channel that Wild Kyle on YouTube, not everyone's cup of tea, and I keep saying it, but I really enjoy it just because it's fun seeing someone so enthused about what they're doing, and I enjoy that. So I really like his channel, because couldn't give a toss about bottles usually. I don't really care about straight-sided Coke bottle, a term that I didn't even know about until recently. But these really old bottles, whether they be Cokes or jars or whatever, it's just really fun seeing him get so excited about them. So it's nice seeing you, Phil, super excited about your rocks, and as I said, I really hope that we can see some of your finds when you've got them. Oh no! And so, let me show you bad thing that just happened. So, obviously the preservation on this is not great. That's a really thin layer. But what we've got is, I'm just going to take the screwdriver. So, I touched an edge here, and this whole section just peeled, which suggests it's not well preserved. I can glue it back down, and probably will. But it's a bit of a shame because it means that that little thin layer is always going to have some rock on it. I'm not even sure it's worth worrying about, but because I have it and I can stick it back down, I will. But for now, I think I'll just take it and stick it on the side out of the way so I can stick that back down later. But one of the risks of fossil prepping, and also some of these fossils, they're split the way they have for a reason. Yeah, I'd say I would be more heartbroken if this was a stunning specimen, perfectly preserved. Breaks happen. It's not the end of the world. also is a good indicator that some of this is probably not as well preserved as we would love, based on the section right here, which is why the area where it broke from. So it broke here, but this area here also doesn't look particularly great, so I'll just be a little careful with it and see. I'll try and reduce the amount of damage we give it. For really rare specimens or ones that are really fragile, you'd be gluing preemptively, so there would have been hopefully some adhesive on it which would reduce the likelihood of that, but again, it happens. I'm not going to be heartbroken about it. If I was, I would never hit an ammonite with a hammer or a chisel, because they all get damaged. Well, not all, a lot of them get damaged. But it does mean every once in a while you get some absolute stunners out. So. But also with the rocks being so hard, you don't want to spend 4 hours, 5 hours prepping something and finding out there's nothing inside. It's much quicker to whack it with a hammer and put it back together with glue later if you need to. So that one's about as good as it looks like it's going to get. Again, it's one of those that when I saw it on the beach and the quality of some of the shell, I was excited that this was going to come out really nicely, but middle's gone again and that little bit broke off. So I'm just going to give this a quick rinse so it can start drying so that I can stick its little broken bit back on. So bear with me 1 second. Sorry, just sorting through. I'm going to pick one more fossil from this stack to have a look at prepping. I'm just trying to decide which one. Yeah, we'll give this one a go. So again, lovely little ammonite split from a nodule. So again, it's one of these what are considered fairly fresh when you come up the cliff that have this, I don't even know how to call them, a sort of rusty nodule appearance. So it's not just the normal muddy limestones, which are the grey colour, it's got the rusty oranges on it, which kind of rubs off as the fossil rolls around, or the nodule rolls around. So again, hit it with a chisel, popped open to expose the ammonite inside. But it's not perfect, there's still some bits. So in fact, I will show you. So this bit here, this whole section, you should be able to see the line here. That's actually ammonite shell, which is split off and is probably in the other side of it. But I don't care, I think it's kind of nice little arty thing. Kind of also shows you how the ammonite would be living in probably one of the end chambers down here somewhere, and you can possibly see some lines of the different chambers as it goes back up. So the goal is just to tidy these corners up and see if we can get this a little prettier. I've just noticed a fun little pathological part of it. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Sorry. There we go. So, and I say so one more time, but if you have a look, the ribs are all pretty much radial. They start from the center, straight line all the way out. There's a couple up here that don't follow that. So something happened to this ammonite at some point in its life that meant that there's something wrong with these ribs here that have formed. This, I doubt, is a fossily, as it turned into a stone, I doubt this is a fossilization thing. I think this is probably likely to have been during the animal's life, that those two have gone wonky. Don't know why, but just noticed it. Mr. Landfill, lunch. Food at the minute sounds delicious. I walked far too far carrying a bag full of these rocks, and even though I got back home yesterday and ate plenty of food yesterday, I am still hungry today. So a sausage sandwich sounds excellent. I hope it's as good as it sounds. My dog's being a little cute. She keeps wandering around, wondering who I'm talking to. She always thinks it's her. Very rarely her. But it's fun just having her wandering around the kitchen. So if you hear little tippy tap noises, it's just the dog walking around, checking on what I'm doing, wondering why I'm talking to myself again. Yeah, so this will be the last ammonite I'm going to try and prep today. If you hang around till when I finish with it, I'll show you one of the finds from the other day. Because I'm not sure how much of it's going to show up in the video. Because there's a lot of debate over what it is at the minute, and one side is really boring and the other side is really exciting depending on the outcome. So my hope is that it's the exciting thing and not the boring thing. But if you hang around, having just done the appropriate level of tease of what it might be, or tease of it, clickbait effectively, Yeah, I'll show you that in probably the next 10 minutes or so. Yeah, Mr. Landfill is exactly what she's going. She's like, my human's talking to me. Why is he talking to me? I'm always a good dog, so it can't be just that reason. Maybe it's time for food. Yeah, that's basically the thought process I imagine she's had. She's also a lab, so yeah, they're very food driven, for better or worse. But it does mean that at a certain time of day, so from about 3:30 onwards, she starts going, is it food time? Yeah, it's food time, right? Yeah, see, it's time, definitely time. Even though she's not supposed to get fed till 5, so she's always a good alarm clock of when it's definitely not 5 o'clock when she first starts begging. But I'm also planning to do some different videos that aren't just fossil hunts and fossil preps, some that'll be a bit more about fossil formation, where you find fossils of certain types in the UK, some more about where I've been fossil hunting maybe. But are there any topics that people would love to hear more about in general? I mean, I suspect you guys who are always here in my live streams will have heard nearly all of my good stories anyway before if they show up in YouTube videos. But if there's something that you guys would think would be a fun video, or something you'd love to see as a YouTube video that you think's missing, let me know, because always looking for different ideas. I know I've got one idea for showing how fossils, at least fossils from Yorkshire, form, so I thought the guy who did the T-Rex hitting rocks with a hammer, my main channel logo one, he says, let me just quickly flick across, so, not the thanks for watching, we're not there yet, but that one, this animation, I've asked him if he would be willing to make some more images to help me explain how fossils form and why we're finding them in Yorkshire. So I already got that under plan. But I'm never sure what the general public would find really interesting to hear about. So, yeah, cheers, Alicia. There's no pressure. It's like, again, I don't want you guys to think that I'm just sat here relying on you to come up with all my ideas. That's not strictly the point. It's just topics that people find interesting. If I can then do something with that, or even make it into a couple of episodes, it allows for me potentially one day getting a job that isn't just sitting at home prepping fossils, so I can then have some more videos for people that perhaps aren't as time intensive. And it means that you guys also then can learn something. I can keep having fun making content and teaching, which I do enjoy doing. So that middle looks alright. Just going to be a bit of a struggle to prep it at the minute. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, Mr. Landfill. It will be somewhat restricted by my expertise, which is not great when it comes to all the prep tools. I am very much an amateur when it comes to doing fossil prep. Much the same way you could say someone who is a builder could probably do basic electricity or plumbing or whatever, but themselves is not a specific plumber. I would say that I was a paleontologist. I can do the academia side of things, but a very niche part of that. But still no expert by any stretch in the fossil prep, but can happily talk about at least some of the different tools that people have got. So what I'm going to do now is call that time for the prep. Just hang around and I will grab the fossil over here, he says. There's another video that will also be showing up, but it will be some time away. One of the fossils from Brunswick Bay was a fish fossil. I don't know if people remember. I put it in the video. It's basically a little tiny piece of block. Let's see if I can get it out of the water. So there you go. So you guys get a sneak preview of this. Not very exciting looking rock. This rock has fish bone in it. You'll have to bear with the light. I appreciate will probably not be great for this. But for example, this bit here is a big chunk of bone. Bit here, down here is bone. There's another bit of bone here, bone here, bone here. But what I saw when I picked it up, oh, that needs a good better clean, is here and here, and on this side there's these bits sticking out that are joined together and are fish scales, or are likely fish scales. So there's a line of them that go all the way down there, and there's, as I said, two more lines on this side. So it looks like there's some fish scales that are articulated. Articulated fish remains are very rare in Yorkshire. So that's just been through one round of acid. The reason it's wet is it's currently soaking in water, and so what you tend to do is you do a day or day and a half of acid. That tends to use up the acid. I'm using acetic, which is basically vinegar, 5%, so very dilute acid. It's gently dissolves away the limestone, leaves the fossil in theory. Then you give it a couple of days in fresh water to make sure that all of the acid salts that not necessarily just on the outside but get into the rock have come back out, been rinsed back out, and then repeat the process. So it's on day 2 of soaking. The fact that there was some bits of still sort of loose mud on the outside means I need to give it another rinse. But yeah, that will be a probably multi-week prep, which you'll get snapshots of through time with the live streams, but there'll be a time lapse at the end. And the last one you have to bear with. It's a very messy house, as I see if I can take you with me without having to move the computer. So there's all of the ammonites from the other day. There's a dog looking at me. So bear with me as I just have to take my headphones off. So this is the thing that is causing some debate. I picked it up and I could think of nothing else other than this being a dinosaur footprint. It looks like one to me. I'm not an expert in them, but it looks very much like it. So in theropods you get a standard 3-toe footprint that looks kind of like if you've seen a bird footprint, kind of exactly like that. So looks in my mind exactly like this, but where it's come from, most of the rocks are it looks a lot like, or sorry, most of the rocks that come from this area are marine sediment. So it's unlikely to be, but at the same time is sufficiently, has all the hallmarks of a dinosaur footprint, whilst at the same time being a bit unusual. And so I've got some people having a look at this side. So if you follow down, I'm going to say there, so this toe, I'm going to call it a toe. If we turn it up, it has a section that you can see go through it that curves around, and this here has the hallmarks also of a footprint. And whether or not it's depressed the sediment under here, this is the big giveaway. So if you think about, if you step in mud, what you do to the layer you step in is you push it down, that then pushes all the layers below that down. And so there's a bit of debate. I've got some people who are far more knowledgeable having a look at this, going, does this look like it's been deformed? Has this section through here where my thumb is, has this been pushed down? Or is this, despite looking like a theropod footprint, is it a case of pareidolia, whatever the pronunciation of that is? Is it something that we are interpreting to be something else just because it kind of looks like it, even though it's nothing to do with it at all? So the suggestions at the minute are footprint, which is what I've picked it up thinking it was, all 20 pounds of rock which I carried around with me. Or is it a weird burrow system? So it'll be interesting to see. I put it on our local fossil hunters site called Yorkshire Fossil Hunters, and so I've got some people who are, I'm going to say experts, but at least far more familiar with the area than I, looking at it and hoping that some of them will come up with an idea. There are fossil footprints from Yorkshire, plenty of them. Not very many dinosaur bones, but there's some famous sites that are full of dinosaur footprints. The problem is where this was found is not near most of those areas, which is why it's causing such uncertainty. There are plant fossils in the area as well, so there's obviously, it's close to shore in certain times. It's just whether or not this happens to be one of those times that we might have got a footprint. So I don't know, but there's your sneak preview. That's going to show up in the next video as well. And I'm hoping I will have a yeah, my vote's for a footprint. It's just, I think, optimistic hope rather than anything else, but I really pray it is. It looks like it one to me, but it remains uncertain, and it may be one of those that no one is 100% sure ever, and that's okay. But I'm just kind of hoping I didn't carry like a third of the weight of my bag, being that one rock after the last hunt for that. So I hope it's more than just some weird burrows. I hope it is a dinosaur footprint, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping I'll get some more feedback on it imminently. Normally people start showing up to Facebook on that group about now as the end of the day comes in. So Hollywood Ranch, Sweet Home. Sorry, I don't know what that reference is, Mr. Landfill, as what potentially a source of people who might know something. Yeah, I mean, the other option is I've got a few friends who do research on footprints and the development of fossil footprints. There's some really fun computer images of basically footprints going through. So I might send them a message and just see. There's plenty of websites if you look up. I think it was just fossil footprint cross-section on Google. If I remember what I did yesterday. Yeah, fossil footprint cross-section, and in the images I scrolled down just a little way, he says, trying to find the ones that he found yesterday, and I did see something that looked almost exactly like mine. So I live optimistically. Whether or not they actually is, we will see. But either way, a fun find. And I've just got a message being told that my ichthyosaur and Hildoceras. So yep. So I'm hoping that I'll have my ichthyosaur and my big ammonite back very shortly. to show them off as well. And there's going to be probably a couple of videos associated with that. There'll be a video with the ammonite with the fossil feeding traces on it as well, so that'll be cool. But anyway, that will be it for me. Ooh. That's my end stream text, and yeah, I appreciate all of you being here. Keep an eye out for the videos coming up in the next, I'm going to say, day or two. They'll start talking about the fossil ammonite giveaway, give you a chance and explain how to enter, which I think will just be comment on that video or the following one about your favorite find from any of my videos, or your favorite fossil I've prepped from any of the videos, and I'll draw a name from the people who have commented, and then I'll organise getting in touch with the winner and get them an ammonite free of charge, as a way of saying thank you for being involved in the community. So thank you everyone for being here. Keep an eye out for those videos coming up, and I appreciate all of you being here as always. If you are still here and haven't done this typical thing of like and subscribe, please do, because if we get to 250, then there'll be another ammonite giveaway as well. So